Welcome back. In this lecture, we are going to understand communitarianism. We are not going to understand critique of Rawlsian theory of justice. Right? Understanding communitarianism basically will help you understand how communitarians criticized Rawls. So we will keep this lens in mind that I want to understand communitarianism. I don't want to understand how they criticized Rawls. Understand communitarianism first, then that light of how they criticized Rawls will light on its own. Will be switched on its own. So don't keep this lens that I want to study this out of criticism of Rawls, but we are going to study this topic as a standalone philosophy. As a standalone philosophy, not as criticism of Rawls, because this is a very important philosophy, I feel. So, communitarianism. In every topic, I try to do etymological analysis of communitarianism. What is the core word of communitarianism? Community. Community is the core word of communitarianism. What is the standard definition of communitarianism? That you are your identity, right? It is very much like discourse analysis of Foucault. Foucault says that you are a product of multiple discourses of the institution that you live around with. Communitarians say the same thing but in positive sense, and they say that human identities are largely shaped by different kinds of communities around you. Your moral judgments, your intuition of justice, your political judgments, your view on policies, institutions, everything is shaped by your community, which is true. If you are a atheist and you belong to a family of atheists, you belong to a society of atheists, your friends are atheists, then there is 90% of chance there is 90% of the chance that you will be pro weed, right? I am not trying to homogenize any communities, but there is 90% chance, right? There is 90% chance that you don't care about eating meat, you don't care about any kind of meat, you are okay with anyone doing anything that they want in their life. If you are a atheist, you are a Hindu, that is a different story. If you are a Muslim, that is a different story. If you are a Christian, that is a different story altogether, right? So your morals, your political ideas, your views on policies, institutions, your sense of justice is shaped by community. This is the basic idea of communitarianism, that you are a product of your community. Communitarianism is you are product of your community. This idea of communitarianism arose arose as critique of liberalism, right? Critique of liberalism. To give a real life anecdote, right? To give a real life anecdote. Suppose there is tigers and there are lions. Tigers will support liberalism because tigers are individualistic, tigers are solitary mammals. Lions are communitarians, they live in prides and they have robust family structure. They live in societies. So, so communitarians, if you are a communitarian, you are like a lion. If you are a liberal, you are like a tiger. You want to live alone, if you are a liberal. If you are a communitarian, you want to live with a large society. The idea of communitarianism essentially arose out of critique of liberalism, which is individualistic like tiger. Right? What is communitarianism? Communitarianism, it is it is a philosophy which criticizes liberalism and which supports community values, and it is also a movement. It is also a movement. What communitarian movement was essentially about is it was started by, or it had this big personality of Amitai Itiziani, is the big personality in communitarian movement. Why communitarian movement arose? Because because liberalism was thought of as best way of life. Liberalism, which is based on autonomy of self, which is based on excessive individualism. This autonomy of self, this excessive individualism led to isolation of a man or a woman. When this excessive autonomy of self, when this excessive individualism led to isolation, what happened was disorders, disorders, disorders first on individual level, right? Individual level. Liberalism, which is individualistic, led to disorders at individual level, psychological disorders. Psychological disorders. So rate of suicides has increased. Society which are extremely individualistic, you will see rate of suicides in that society to be higher than the societies which are communitarian in some sense. In joint families, you see lesser suicides than in nuclear families. Why? Because in joint families, you have a community around, right? The most individualistic society in the world right now, according for me, right? As much I have studied, I feel that Japanese society, which is very much work based, and Korean society, which is very much individual based, and they are the worst form of capitalism, worst form of liberalism. Such societies, Hong Kong as well. These societies which have became individualistic in worst possible sense are the societies which are most vulnerable to psychological disorders, and suicide rates there are higher than nearby countries like Philippines, nearby countries like Thailand or Indonesia, because Thailand, Indonesia, Philippines are community based community based countries. Community orientation is higher there, right? So liberalism as an ideology which is based on autonomy of self can lead to psychological disorders on individual level, and you see rate of suicides increasing, right? Then he Then he says that disorders are also seen as societal level. Societal level. Social crimes increase, right? Social crimes increase. Domestic violence increase. Then there is subculture of poverty, right? If you have nothing to lose, then you are more inclined towards committing a crime. On societal level, you will find disorders of social crimes, the subculture of poverty, subculture of crime, and so on societal level, you will find situations like in USA. In USA, you meet parents only twice a year, and you have to ask them for time. In India, you can go back to home at any point of time. Your parents will welcome you. But if you do that in USA, they won't even entertain you because they will say you could have asked us before coming to our home because we are busy. On societal level, things like these can happen when excessive individualism is there. In India or in societies of South Asia, you see a lot of love is showered on daughters, sons, grandsons, granddaughters. But in societies like USA, where you live so far apart and you meet only once or twice a year, that that love is not there. That care is not there on that level. On societal level, these are the issues. And issues of individualism on level of polity. On societal level, I missed one thing. I will just on societal level, you can cite this book by Robert Putnam. Robert Putnam in his book Bowling Alone, he analyzed declining social capital in Western societies. Declining social capital means declining social relations in Western societies. Right? You can cite this in your answers. Then on level of polity, you see analysis of Hannah Arendt. She says that in crisis period, you become alone, you become isolated. Isolated persons are easy to mobilize, and on level of polity, such individualism, such autonomy of self can lead to totalitarianism, right? And against these disorders of extreme isolation, Amitai Etizioni started communitarianism as a social movement. This was communitarianism as a social movement by Amitai Etizioni because of disorders of excessive individualism on individual, societal, and political level. The next, the next idea is communitarianism as philosophy. Communitarianism as philosophy. Communitarianism as philosophy. What does this mean? What does this mean? This means basically the same thing, that they will write with community good in mind. Communitarianism as a philosophy was written by scholars like Alasdair MacIntyre, Michael Sandel, Michael Walzer, Charles Taylor. There are other scholars as well, but these are the most important scholars. Alasdair MacIntyre, we are going to study his book After Virtue. Michael Sandel, we are going to understand liberalism and limits of justice. Michael Walzer, we are going to understand in his book Spheres of Justice. And Charles Taylor, we are going to understand philosophical papers, his book, and his concept of situated self. Right? Communitarianism as a philosophy had a lot of influences on communitarianism. Who were the influences? Aristotle, Aristotle, and his concept of civic participation. Right? If you are a free man, Aristotle will say that if you are participating, then if you are participating in political affairs, then you are a free man. There is influence of Rousseau as well, who talks about general will, who talks about popular sovereignty, right? Then there is Hannah Arendt, Zoon Politikon, acting in concert, right? There is T.S. Green as well, who talks about if you have a right, this means society recognize your right to have right? Only that right you can have, which society recognize. His idea of right is society driven, right? So this is the influences on communitarianism as a philosophy, Aristotle's civic republicanism, civic participation, Rousseau's general will, popular sovereignty, T.S. Green's T.S. Green's we understood T.S. Green twice in Liberty and one more time. So there is this quote: Liberty, human consciousness postulates liberty. Liberty demands right, and rights demand state. In this quote, rights demand states. That part basically mean that such rights which are recognized by society will be accepted by state. So T.S. Green is also an influence. Why it is an influence? Because it talks about society recognized rights. Right? These are the influences. Now we are going to understand the basic features of communism, basic assumption of not communism, sorry, communitarianism, so that we will be able to understand the scholars in easier detail. So basic features or assumptions of communitarianism. Basic features or assumptions of communitarianism. The first assumption of communitarianism is conception of self. Conception of self. There are two conception of self, right? There is liberal conception of self. What is liberal conception of self? Liberal conception of self is autonomy of self. Autonomy of self. Liberals see man as atomistic man. Atomistic man. What is atomistic man? Atomistic man basically mean that person is not seen as part of society but as an individual. You as an individual matter more than your position in society. Right? This is atomistic man. Liberal view on conception of self, autonomy of self, or atomistic man. For communitarians, man is situated self. Situated self. Where man is situated? where man is situated in his community. Situated self means you are situated within your community. Your your morals, your everything is written by, is driven by your community morals, right? This situated self idea is historical or anthropological view of man, historical or anthropological view of man, whereby you see man as a person of a society, not as man himself, right? You are seen as a person of a society, not a atomistic man, not an atomistic man. You are a situated self. You are a situated within, right? If you remember that heteronormative matrix, whereby Judith Butler says that you become a woman by performing by performativity in heteronormative matrix. By performing in heteronormative matrix, you become not, she does not say women, she says gender. This is the same concept, that you become a self by performing this matrix of community, right? Yourself is not yourself. Yourself is community driven, right? Yourself is community driven. Man is situated within his community. Man is not atomistic self. Man is not unencumbered self. Unencumbered self. What is unencumbered self means? Means that you are not encumbered by any morals society, any morals of your society. You are not encumbered by, you are not limited by the the ideas which have been given by society to you. You are an unencumbered self, right? This is what liberals say, that you are an unencumbered self, but you are free of all the ideas which have been given by society to you. For communitarians, man is situated self, right? So the first assumption of communitarians is that conception of self, on which liberals will say self is atomistic self. You are not part of society, but you are an individual. For communitarians, self is situated self, that you are part of community. Your your thinking, your ideas, yourself has been made by being in a particular community. You are not unencumbered self, but you are a situated self, right? The second concept or second feature or second assumption of communitarians is their conception of justice. Conception of justice. For liberals, for liberals, justice for liberals or for Rawls, justice is the first virtue, right? Rawls says that just as truth is first virtue of any system of thought, justice is the first virtue of any system of any society. However attractive a system of thought appears, it must be discarded if it is not based on truth. This idea that justice is the first virtue of a social system, of a social system, was discarded by communitarians. Communitarians will say communitarians will say justice justice is not the first virtue. Why justice is not the first virtue? Because why justice is not the first virtue? Because justice is useful in conflicts. Justice is useful in conflicts. And communitarians will say cooperation is a bigger cooperation is a bigger idea when you are in a community. There is no need of justice when you are in a community because community itself is very cooperative. So justice for communitarians is not the first virtue. It is useful only in conflict, and justice is a remedial virtue. Justice is a remedial virtue. Justice is useful only in conflict. Justice is like neutrality. Neutrality is also useful only in conflicts. So justice is not the first virtue. Then what is the first virtue? Justice is not the first virtue. Then what is the first virtue? First virtue is dependent on a society. For Rawls, for liberals, justice is the first virtue of social system. Communitarians will say, what is the first virtue of a social system will be dependent on that society, right? If you go in socialistic society, then for that society, equality is the first virtue. If you come in Indian society, what is the first virtue? Dharma is the first virtue. By dharma, I don't mean religion, I mean duty. Duty is the first virtue, right? Duty is the first virtue. So first, if you go to uh, in a Muslim country, what is the first virtue? Religion is the first virtue. Justice is a first virtue. It is very much limited to liberal world. Different societies can have different first virtues. So conception of justice as first virtue is very much limited to liberal thing, liberal societies. This communitarians criticize, and communitarian says that justice is not the first virtue. Justice is useful in conflicts, and justice is remedial virtue. Societies will decide what is the first virtue for them, and he says that in socialism, equality can be first virtue. In Indian society, dharma can be first virtue. In Muslim society, religion can be first virtue. Right? So this is the second assumption as given by communitarians. The third assumption as given by communitarians is conception of right and good. Conception of right and good. Conception of right and good. We have studied in Rawls, right is prior to good. When we studied in Rawls, this made a lot of sense. This made a lot of sense because right is prior to good. We are people of 21st century. We are very liberal people. We want to be, we want to say that right is prior to good, right? Autonomy of self is prior to good of the society, right? Right is prior to good means my choice of doing something or not doing something, my autonomy of self, my right to do something or not to do something, my decision in life is not shaped by is not shaped by what society expects from me, or it is not shaped by good of the society, right? Good of the society does not shape my right to take decision. Individualism matter more in liberals, right? I am talking about liberal. This idea that right is prior to good was not liked by communitarians, and communitarians say that right is not prior to good. Right is not prior to good. We have studied right is prior to good. They will say, communitarians will say exact opposite thing. Right is not prior to good. Not prior to good. Rather, rather, right is right is constituted by good. Right is constituted by good. For them, right rights are not independent of community conception of good. Rights are not independent of community conception of good. For communitarians, goods good comes first, then right. Right? Good comes first and then right. What does it mean? Right? Simply what does it mean? That rights are not independent of community conception of good, or right is not prior to good, rather it is constituted by good. What does it mean? It means a very simple thing. It means a very simple thing, that you as an individual, you are not an atomistic self. You are not atomistic self. You are right. You are not an atomistic self. Your decision making, your self, your individualistic self, your autonomy of self is not without your community. Your community good decides your decisions without you knowing it. Right? Right is not prior to good. Right, rather, right is constituted by good. That right. Most of the people who are viewing this video want to become IAS officer. This decision that you want to become an IAS officer, it is not your own decision, right? You must have gone to some session. You must have had some of your cousin become an IAS officer. You must have had seen someone and motivated by them that you want to become an IAS officer. Your this decision, which you think has been taken by you, it is autonomous of the society, is simply not true. You have taken this decision because you have you are motivated by either the work, you are motivated by either the power, you are motivated by either the perks and all those things, because you have seen those things with someone else, or you have been fed all those things from your life. So right is not prior to good, but rather right is constituted by good. Rights are not independent of that community conception of good. You are you are thinking to become a civil servant. It is not independent of community conception of good. You think that if I become IS officer, IRS officer, if I clear this exam, my value, my status in the community will increase. शादी जल्दी हो जाएगी. My marriage will be done easily. I will get a lot of respect from I will get a lot of respect from peers around me, society around me, parents, family, all those things. So one of the one of the reasons can be this, that you want all those things. That is why you are still studying for this exam. So rights are not independent of community conception of good. Goods come first, then right. Right? Goods come first, then right. But when goods come first and then right, this means goals are defined. Goals are defined. In some cases, procedure can also be defined. When goals are defined, procedure also is defined. Such theory is end state theory. Right? End state theory in political philosophy is is it is not seen in a good light. If your theory is end state theory, it is not seen in a good light. Only purely procedure theory are seen in a good light. But what is issue with purely procedural theory and what is the pro of end state theory, that only end state theory are real, right? They are practical. End state theory are real and practical. Without a goal, what you are working towards, right? At least Plato had a goal of a political system which has philosopher king, and he gave a process for that. So when there is a straightforward process, when there is a straightforward goal, that goal can be achieved easily. When you are saying things in the air, that there is no goal, there is no procedure, then then how do we proceed in political society with that? You cannot proceed with political societies with that. So only end state theories are real. They are practical, right? Only consequential theories are real, right? Consequential theories are real. Only end set theories are real, right? Only teleological theories are real. Purely procedural theory, not purely, purely procedural theory, purely procedural theories, they are abstract, they are abstract, and they are relevant only in original position, right? Right. When you go in original position, who can go in original position? Nobody can. You cannot think out of your community values when you go to a public policy forum, right? Parliamentarians, when they go on national level, can they think on community level? Yes, they are thinking on community level. They are not thinking for the nation, they are thinking of the community level, they are thinking of their parties, they are thinking for their vote bank, right? So nowhere in the world you see that policymakers go behind original position to think on an issue. That is just abstract, that is just relevant in original position, that is not practical at all, right? Then we move to fourth assumption of conception of state. Of state. Okay, conception of state. Third assumption is conception of state. Conception of state. Conception of state. Conception of state. Liberals have one conception of state. Liberals say that state is a neutral institution. State is neutral institution. Communitarians will say communitarians will say state is a neutral institution. I missed a point. State is a neutral institution, and state should be neutral among conflicting values and notions of good. State is a neutral institution, and state should be neutral among conflicting values of notion of good. Communitarians, on the other hand, will say that no need to be neutral. There is no need to be neutral at all, right? And they will say that we have to promote those conceptions which are good for community. Promote those conception of justice which are good for the community, right? So what will community say? What will communitarians will say? Communitarians will criticize universal conception of justice, right? What is good for community? Do that. Community is a small thing. It is a small unit of analysis. So communitarians will say that don't believe in universal conception of justice, don't believe in universal set of rights, right? Don't believe in universal set of rights. State or society is not aggregation, but it is organic. Your society is not aggregation of individual, as Bentham said. It is organic, as Rousseau said. Your community is more than sum of its part. So this is the idea behind communitarian and communitarianism. We saw comparatively what communitarianism and liberalism say about self, justice, right and good, and conception of state. This was basic idea of communitarianism. From the next lecture, we'll start with Michael Sandel, Charles Taylor, and we'll try to understand Michael Walzer as well. Thank you so much. I will see you next time.